Okay, so we're talking about rational functions, and the parent rational function was y equals 1 over x. But if we want to graph this one, it changes just like you'd expect, just like when we did the functions before. Anything by the x affects it in the x direction. So that's going to move our parent function 3 spots to the left. All right, let's look at another one. What if I had a rational function y equals 1 over x, and I decide to do this to it? That would move it where? Left 5, 7 down. Good. All right. Now, let's actually look at one. This is one where I have made my parent function and its asymptotes. The blue asymptote is, which one is that, the horizontal or the vertical? Blue one's the horizontal. What's the red one? The vertical asymptotes. And there's my parent function. Now remember, the dotted lines really aren't part of the function, but I can move it all together this way. Now, if I want to do this one, what is the plus 6 in my problem there? What is that going to do? Left 6. What does the plus 4 do? Up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's all there is to it. The whole parent will move that way, and you're done. Now, if you had to do this without the nice little thing that slides around, because you don't have one of those on your paper, what you'd start with is, where does the parent function go? It goes through these 2 important points. And remember how it gets closer and closer and never touches? But the key here is that it goes through 2 important points. And those 2 important points are right here and here. I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, I'm back. So here's the 2 key points. The 2 key points, and you just got to move them. So whenever you'd graph one of these, you start by graphing the key points, and then you just move them. So this gets to move 6 to the left and up 4. So I'd move this point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the. Uh-oh. The whole board just moved. I'm going to try that again. Undo that. There we go. I should lock this thing down. Lock in place. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the left, and then up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I move the other point, 6 to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the left. Up 1, 2, 3, 4. Now envision for me. Can you see where those asymptote lines should go? Remember, they were an exact straight up and down line and a straight across line. The straight across line obviously has to go like this, and the up and down line has to go like this. So those are my asymptote lines. Draw those next. And the last thing you draw is the part where it gets closer and closer and never touches. Really, do it in that order. It'll be a lot easier if you do. Because once you got these lines here, you just get close to them and never touch them. Because your graphs will look the best if you do that. All right? So, a typical question will ask you then when you're all done, what was the vertical asymptote? You've drawn it, but what is it? It's a line. The vertical one is the one that goes up and down. That's this one right here. And it's x equals -6. You're right. It's really confusing whether that's a y equals -6 or an x equals -6. You just have to think it through. And this other one is obviously a y equals. And y equals, it's up here at 4. So yep, y equals 4. Now, just look for a second. I wouldn't have even needed my graph to know what those were. Do you see how these 2 numbers here are really just these 2 numbers? And doesn't it make sense that this is the x one? Because it's by the x. And doesn't it make sense that this is the y one? Because that's always been our y stuff that moves up, down. And then, doesn't it make sense that this is a -6 here? Because always, these are counterintuitive. The things that are right by the x are counterintuitive. So to see if you really got that, here's a typical question that's on the back side of today's worksheet. They'll say, here is an equation, y equals 1 over x plus 2 minus 16. And it'll say, what are the equations for the horizontal and the vertical asymptotes? Do you remember just a second ago? Would you agree that 2 and -16 are the 2 things that we're going to use? Okay, good. What should it be? -2, because that's always counterintuitive, and -16. Then, would you agree x and y are the 2 variables? In which order is the hard part, right? Remember, the x is the one that's by the x. So this one is x equals -2, And the y one is the one that does y stuff, which is over there. So this is y equals negative 16. So you don't even need the graph to get your asymptote lines. See how to do that? And they're going to ask for equations. All they mean is it has an equal sign, and therefore it's an equation. All right, so sure, yes, you can do that. If you want to start with the asymptote lines and say, okay, I know where those two are. X equals negative 2, so I go to negative 2. It's right there. So, and y equals negative 16. I guess that's the way down here. Let's say it's down here. And I go like that. Those are my asymptote lines, and I put my 2 key points in. All right, that way works fine too. The thing to don't try to do is don't try to draw the actual graph until you have the asymptotes. You got to have the asymptotes first before you draw your curves in. Okay, so that's all there is to it. I'm going to give you I stayed up late last night and got all those things graded, so I'm going to give them back to the people that are done. The people that are not done with your tests, you can start them. They are sitting up here. If you're going to finish, you have 10 minutes. And your homework assignment, I will hand out right now and stop the video.